There comes a moment in life when you realize your most valuable currency isn't money or even time. It's your energy. That quiet reservoir within you that fuels your thoughts, guides your decisions, and keeps you calm while the world storms around you. And when that truth sinks in, everything shifts. You stop chasing approval. You stop explaining yourself to ears that never cared to listen. You stop trading pieces of your peace just to keep others comfortable. Instead, you begin to guard your inner world like a sacred temple, not out of coldness, but out of respect for the rarest treasure you own, your peace. The Stoics understood this long before psychology gave it a name. They taught that true strength belongs to the one who rules himself, who remains steady when others waver, who shields the flame of his spirit from the winds of drama, insult, and noise. So, this is not about cutting people off in anger. It's about choosing serenity with wisdom. It's about becoming the kind of person who walks into a room carrying silence like armor, who commands respect without raising their voice, who knows that protecting their energy is not indulgence, it is responsibility. Because in a world this loud, this draining, protecting your peace isn't just survival, it's sanity. 1. Guard your peace like sacred ground. There's something sacred about silence. Not the awkward silence between strangers, but the inner silence you carry when nothing disturbs you, when your mind is still, your breath steady, and your heart doesn't race with the noise of what others are doing, saying, or expecting. That silence is a form of power, and in a world addicted to noise, it's also rare. That's why your peace, your inner clarity, isn't something to be shared freely. It's not a common area. It's sacred ground, and the truth is, not everyone deserves access to it. Most of us grew up believing that being a good person means being available, that kindness means listening to everyone, helping everyone, letting people vent, unload, insult, or even disrespect, so long as we're being understanding. But that's not Stoicism. That's self-neglect dressed up as virtue. The Stoics didn't see peace as a passive state. They saw it as a result of constant internal discipline, of boundaries enforced not with violence, but with clarity. You don't need to yell to protect your peace. You just need to stop offering it up to people who treat it like it's disposable. Think of your peace like a garden. The more you let people trample through it, the less it thrives. The more time you spend cleaning up after emotional intrusions, the less time you have to grow what really matters: your focus, your self-respect, your purpose. And often it's not the dramatic people who ruin it, it's the subtle ones. The ones who bring tension instead of support. The ones who ask for your time, but ignore your value. The ones who disguise manipulation as connection. They don't come to your garden to help you grow. They come to pull up roots. And here's the Stoic truth most people don't want to hear. Just because someone wants access to you doesn't mean they're entitled to it. Peace doesn't come from being liked. It comes from being aligned with your values, your priorities, your limits. If someone disturbs that alignment, you have every right to remove their influence. You don't need a dramatic speech. You don't need to prove your reasoning. In fact, the more peaceful your exit, the more powerful your message. This mindset is not about isolation. It's about protection. You can love people from a distance. You can respect them and still say, "Not here, not in my space. Not in my mind." You can be kind without being available. You can be generous without being drained. The Stoics knew that energy was a resource, and just like money, time, or attention, it should be spent with intention. If you're not choosing who enters your peace, you're surrendering it. One of the simplest and most powerful practices you can begin today is this. Treat your inner world as sacred ground. Visualize it. Walk through it in your mind. Know where you feel centered, know what makes you restless, and most importantly, know who you become when you ignore your boundaries. That version of you, the tired, resentful, scattered version, is not your best self. It's your warning sign, and you owe it to yourself to listen. So the next time someone brings drama, chaos, or guilt to your doorstep, ask yourself, would I let this energy into my home? If the answer is no, then don't let it into your mind. Because once you understand that your peace is sacred, you stop defending it with noise and start preserving it with silence. You stop waiting for people to change and start choosing yourself without apology. That's not selfish, that's strength, and in the end, it's the most stoic thing you can do. 2. Don't attend every emotional battle you're invited to. It's a strange habit we humans have. We think that just because someone throws a challenge our way, we have to accept it. That if someone disrespects us, gossips about us, undermines us, or provokes us, we must respond, react, prove ourselves. But here's the hard truth. Not every emotional invitation deserves an RSVP. Some people thrive on conflict. They feed on attention, control, and chaos, and the moment you react, they win. Because the goal wasn't resolution, it was distraction. They didn't want clarity, they wanted your peace. The Stoics warned us about this centuries ago. Epictetus said, if someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. What does that mean? It means your reaction isn't caused by them. It's chosen by you. You don't get dragged into emotional drama by force. You walk in, even if unconsciously. But once you understand this, you can step back. You can observe without absorbing. You can witness someone else's meltdown without making it your mission to fix it, or worse, match it. Every day you will meet people who bait you. Some do it with arrogance, others with passive aggression. Some with guilt, others with subtle insults hidden under polite smiles. And if you're not conscious, you'll fall into the trap of defending yourself, explaining yourself, justifying your existence to people who never wanted to understand you in the first place. And what do you lose in the process? Time, focus, energy, and worst of all, your inner calm. But what if you didn't play? What if instead of reacting, you paused? What if you practiced emotional judo, not meeting force with force, but letting it pass right through you? Think of an argument as a punch. Most people punch back, but a Stoic steps aside. They don't engage unless there's purpose, and ego is not purpose. Proving yourself is not purpose. Defending your worth to someone who refuses to see it is not noble, it's draining. There's immense power in letting others be loud while you remain still, in choosing calm when chaos is expected. Imagine how unsettling that is to someone who's trying to provoke you. They want drama, but you offer silence. They want a reaction, but you offer stillness. Suddenly they lose control because their entire strategy depended on you abandoning your self-control. This doesn't mean being passive, it means being strategic. There's a difference between cowardice and wisdom. You're not weak for walking away from pointless arguments. You're wise for protecting your energy. The strongest people are not those who yell the loudest. They're the ones who know when silence says more, when leaving a room preserves more power than staying in it and winning the fight. So here's a practice. The next time you feel your blood pressure rise, your heart speed up, your hands tighten, pause. Breathe. Ask yourself, is this worth my peace? Not your pride, not your ego, your peace. Because at the end of the day, no one will refund you for the hours you spent arguing with people committed to misunderstanding you, but you will feel the cost in your mood, your clarity, your creativity, and your sleep. Remember, peace is not won in the arena of noise. It's maintained by stepping away from it. That's not avoidance. It's mastery. That's not weakness. It's wisdom. You don't have to accept every invitation, and sometimes the most powerful move is no move at all. 3. Say no and don't explain it. There's a quiet strength in saying no without guilt. No excuses, no over-explaining, no long trails of justification, just a calm, centered refusal. And yet, for many of us, that's one of the hardest things to do. Because somewhere along the way, we were conditioned to believe that our worth is tied to how agreeable we are, how available, how much we accommodate others, even when it costs us our time, our peace, or our energy. But here's the Stoic reality. Every time you say yes to something that drains you, you're saying no to something that could fulfill you. Stoicism teaches us to act from reason, not compulsion, and people-pleasing is nothing more than a socially accepted compulsion. It's driven by fear, not wisdom. Fear of being disliked, fear of disappointing, fear of conflict. So we say yes to things we don't want, we attend events we dread, we take calls we're not emotionally ready for, we lend energy we don't have to give, and then we wonder why we feel burnout, resentful, or invisible. It's because every yes made from guilt chips away at your integrity, and over time, It becomes hard to tell where your will ends and other people's expectations begin. That's why learning to say no is not just a skill, it's a form of self-respect. It's how you draw the invisible lines that protect your emotional real estate. And the key? You don't owe anyone an essay. No, I won't be able to, that's enough. No, I need time for myself, still enough. When someone demands a justification for your boundary, it's not because they don't understand. It's because they don't accept it. And people who don't respect your no don't deserve access to your yes. In the Stoic sense, virtue is not just in what you give, but in what you protect. And your time, your mental bandwidth, your emotional clarity. These are finite resources. You wouldn't hand someone your last $20 just because they asked. Why hand them your attention, your energy, your peace every time they ask? Every time you guard those with a firm but quiet no, you strengthen the boundaries that keep your life in order. You stop scattering your focus in 100 directions. You begin to act with intention, not obligation. Let's be honest, not everyone will like your no. Some will push back. They'll call you distant, selfish, cold. Let them, because what they're really saying is, I liked it better when I could take from you freely. But you're not here to be consumed. You're not here to be endlessly available. You're here to live in alignment with your values, your rhythm, your priorities. That means you don't say yes out of guilt. You say yes out of choice. This shift isn't easy. At first, you'll feel the pull to explain yourself, to justify your space. But over time, something beautiful happens. You begin to feel stronger in your silence. You begin to recognize that no is not rejection, it's redirection. It's choosing your peace over their pressure. It's choosing your clarity over their confusion. And most of all, it's choosing you. So here's your reflection. The next time you feel that familiar guilt when you want to decline, pause. Ask yourself, am I about to betray myself just to keep someone else comfortable? If the answer is yes, stop, breathe, and say no, calmly, firmly, without explanation. Because you don't owe anyone access to your energy, and the day you stop apologizing for protecting it is the day you start reclaiming it. For, detach from their moods. They're not yours to fix. There's something deeply exhausting about walking on emotional eggshells. When every word you say is measured, every move is adjusted, and every silence is interpreted as offense. It's like being trapped in someone else's emotional weather. One minute it's calm, the next it's a storm, and without realizing it, you start shrinking yourself to manage someone else's mood. You start becoming a version of yourself that's more focused on avoiding explosions than expressing truth. But here's what the Stoics would tell you. Their chaos is not your responsibility. Their mood is not your mission, and their suffering is not yours to carry. We are not emotional janitors. We are not here to clean up every mess others leave behind just because we care. Compassion is noble, but when it turns into emotional entanglement, it becomes a trap. Stoicism doesn't ask us to stop feeling. It asks us to feel with boundaries, to love without losing ourselves, to support without surrendering our mental health. And that begins with detachment, not cold indifference, but wise separation. You can be present without being pulled in. You can listen without absorbing. You can witness someone else's storm without inviting it into your home. There are people who live in cycles of negativity. They complain, blame, criticize, self-destruct, and expect you to validate it all. They confuse empathy with enmeshment. They want you to join them in the emotional hole, not realizing that real support comes from staying grounded and pulling others upward, not falling with them. And when you don't join their spiral, they might call you insensitive, distant, or even cruel. But again, their perception isn't your truth. You are not cruel for refusing to co-sign their chaos. You are not distant for choosing your peace. You are simply awake. Detachment is the art of staying rooted in yourself while others drift. It's saying, I see you, I hear you, but I don't have to carry this for you. It's the realization that your emotional state should not be at the mercy of someone else's instability. When you're constantly adjusting yourself to regulate another person, you lose the core of who you are, and over time, you forget what calm even feels like. You begin to live reactively, not intentionally. That is not Stoic strength, it's spiritual surrender. So, how do you detach practically? First, recognize the signs. Do you feel drained after every interaction? Do you feel responsible for their happiness? Do you feel guilty when you choose yourself? These are red flags, not of your failure, but of your overfunctioning. Then set the line. You don't need to announce it. You don't need to fight. Just begin showing up differently. When they complain, don't dive in. When they guilt trip, don't explain. When they sulk, don't chase. Just stay still. Let their emotions pass like clouds across your sky, noticed, but not absorbed. This kind of detachment is not easy, especially if you've spent years being the fixer, the emotional sponge, the peacemaker. But you must ask yourself, what has that role cost you? How many times have you burned out trying to make someone else feel whole? The truth is, no amount of overgiving will heal someone committed to their own misery, and no level of emotional sacrifice will bring peace to a person who hasn't found it within themselves. So instead of overextending, practice presence with limits. Instead of reacting, practice observing. Instead of rescuing, practice releasing. And when the guilt creeps in, remind yourself, I can care without carrying. I can love without losing myself. Their mood is their weather. Mine is mine, and I choose to stay in the calm, not because I'm heartless, but because I've learned that peace is not a luxury. It's my baseline, it's my standard, it's my responsibility to protect. 5. Recognize energy vampires and walk away silently. Not all harm comes loudly. Some of it arrives wearing politeness. Some of it enters quietly through a friend who always has a problem but never asks about yours. Through a coworker who always needs to vent, yet somehow drains the air from every room they're in. Through a family member who doesn't raise their voice but whose passive aggression is a constant hum in your nervous system. These are energy vampires, not in the mystical sense, but in the real psychological one. People whose presence costs more than it gives, and unless you recognize them early, they'll feed on your time, your clarity, and your sense of self. Energy vampires don't always intend harm, but intent doesn't erase effect. Maybe they need attention to feel secure. Maybe they've never learned how to self-regulate. Maybe drama is their only form of identity. But whatever the root, the impact is the same. You walk away from them feeling heavier, not because of what they said, but because of what they left behind in your mind. You find yourself replaying their complaints, carrying their worries, or questioning your decisions because of their doubts. That's the sign. That's when you know they didn't come to connect. They came to unload. The Stoics taught us to observe the effect others have on our internal state. They urged us to protect the inner citadel, to defend the mind not only from insults and violence but from subtle, corrosive influence. And this is where quiet departure becomes an act of wisdom. You don't need a final speech. You don't need closure. You don't need to make them understand why you're stepping back, because they won't. They'll say you've changed. They'll say you're distant. They'll say you're not who you used to be, and they'll be right. You're not, because you finally realize that your energy is a finite resource, not a communal supply. There's a fear that comes with walking away quietly. A voice in your head says you owe them something, a final explanation, a proper goodbye, a second or third chance. But that voice is often guilt in disguise, and guilt is a poor compass for personal growth. You don't owe continued access to someone who refuses to grow. You don't owe your light to someone who keeps living in darkness by choice. And you certainly don't owe yourself the fatigue of another round of emotional draining just to be polite. This is where the Stoic mindset offers clarity. Epictetus reminds us, it is not things that disturb us, but our opinions about them. When you believe that you must be available to everyone, you suffer. But when you shift that belief, when you see your peace as something to be preserved, not spread thin, you begin to reclaim control. You begin to see that some exits are not betrayals but blessings, that silence is not cruelty but healing, that disappearing from toxic dynamics is not abandonment, it's self-respect. So, how do you walk away silently? First, stop feeding the loop. Don't argue. Don't try to fix. Don't stay to explain. Just begin withdrawing your energy. Less engagement, fewer replies, more time for yourself. Let the distance build like fog until their grip fades, not out of punishment, out of peace. Because you no longer need their noise to feel useful. You no longer need their crisis to feel needed. You've chosen your own restoration. In time, they'll find someone else to drain. But you'll feel lighter, clearer, more rooted in who you are without the constant emotional interference. And when that clarity comes, protect it, guard it, let it grow. Because the more you choose silence over struggle, the more you realize that peace doesn't always make noise. It often arrives after you stop responding. 6. Control your inputs, not just your surroundings. It's easy to believe that energy protection is only about people, about who you allow in your life, who you cut out, who you avoid. But there's something even more subtle and just as powerful shaping your energy every day. Your inputs. What you watch, what you listen to, what you scroll past at midnight when your brain is tired and your guard is down. These aren't passive moments. They are small, consistent instructions to your nervous system. And if you're not intentional about them, they will dictate your emotional climate without you even noticing. The Stoics understood this long before the digital age. They practiced attention as discipline. They knew that your thoughts become your emotions, and your emotions shape your actions. And today, in a world overloaded with stimulation, the mind has become a sponge. It absorbs everything. Headlines designed to trigger fear, social feeds built on comparison, voices that reward outrage over understanding. And without meaning to, you become reactive not because your life is chaotic, but because your inputs are. Energy protection today starts with curation, not of aesthetic, but of mental space. Ask yourself, what are you feeding your mind? Who are you letting speak into your thoughts through podcasts, shows, news, music, even background noise? Because everything you consume leaves a residue. Some of it inspires, some of it fuels resentment, some of it reminds you of your goals, and some of it pulls you further from them. Let's be honest, doom scrolling isn't just a bad habit. It's a slow erosion of your focus and peace. The more you consume without discernment, the more cluttered your mind becomes, and a cluttered mind can't create. It can't rest. It can't respond wisely. It reacts, it imitates, it seeks dopamine over direction. And when that happens, your energy isn't being stolen by others, it's being leaked through your own behavior. So what do? You become a gatekeeper. You begin to treat your mind like a home, not a hallway. You choose what enters. You build routines around intentional input, books that teach instead of distract, conversations that lift instead of deplete, environments that reset instead of drain. You take time to sit in silence, to rewire the overstimulated circuits. You turn off the background noise that's been shaping your emotions in the name of productivity or comfort. Imagine your energy as a garden. You wouldn't dump trash in the soil and expect growth, yet we do it with our minds all the time. We let negativity, gossip, outrage, and triviality plant seeds, and then wonder why we feel unfocused, anxious, uninspired. But once you realize that consumption is creation, you start filtering what you allow in. You realize that peace isn't just about avoiding toxic people, it's also about avoiding toxic patterns of input. And it's not about being perfect. You don't need to cut out all entertainment, all news, all idle moments. You just need to be aware, conscious. You need to know that every scroll is a choice, every video is a message, every sound, image, and sentence is a suggestion to your subconscious, and you get to decide which suggestions take root. So here's your quiet challenge. Review your inputs today. Not just who you're around, but what you're absorbing. Declutter your digital life. Be ruthless with what you mute, unfollow, cancel, or simply stop engaging with. Build a mental diet that nourishes you not just to feel good, but to think clearly. Because your energy depends not only on the world around you, but on the signals you invite into your mind. And protecting your peace means guarding every door, including the ones you open with a screen. 7. Avoid the need to correct or convince. There's a certain kind of exhaustion that comes not from work or effort, but from resistance. The constant urge to explain yourself, to change someone's mind, to fix their perspective so they'll finally see what you see. You've probably felt it. That mental drain after a debate that went nowhere, the emotional weight of trying to help someone who refuses to help themselves, the quiet frustration when logic is met with defiance. But here's the hard truth the Stoics knew well. Not every mind is ready, not every argument deserves your voice, and not every person is open to truth, no matter how clearly you present it. We live in a time where opinions have become armor, where beliefs are identity, and identity is defended with emotion, not reason. When someone's negativity or victimhood becomes who they are, trying to challenge it isn't received as kindness, it's received as an attack. And what do you do in response? You try harder. You offer more evidence. You raise your voice. You repeat yourself, hoping the words will land the second or third time. But often it only fuels more resistance, because the real issue was never lack of understanding. It was lack of willingness. The Stoics taught detachment not as withdrawal, but as freedom. Freedom from the illusion that it's your job to enlighten everyone. Marcus Aurelius put it plainly, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That includes the minds of others. Their refusal to see the truth? Not your responsibility. Their reaction to your boundaries? Not your burden. Their refusal to grow? Not your failure. Every time you try to convince someone who is committed to misunderstanding you, you drain your spirit. You leave the interaction with less clarity, not more, and often their negativity remains untouched while your peace lies in pieces. That's not strength. That's surrender. That's giving your energy to resistance instead of progress. So, how do you reclaim it? By shifting the question. Instead of asking, how do I make them see? Ask, is it worth trying? Instead of assuming their change is possible, ask if it's your role, and if the answer is no, then walk away. Not out of coldness, but out of wisdom. Let their worldview remain intact. Let their opinions echo. Let them think they've won, because you weren't in it to win. You were in it to help, and now that you see they don't want help, you move on. Detaching from the need to convince is one of the most liberating decisions you can make. It allows you to speak only when it matters, to save your energy for those who are open, receptive, ready. You begin to see that silence is not weakness. It's discernment. You don't have to meet every false claim with correction. You don't have to educate everyone who speaks in ignorance. You can simply walk away, and walking away doesn't mean you've lost. It means you've chosen peace over pride, wisdom over ego, stillness over struggle. The more you live this way, the more power you reclaim, not power over others, but over yourself. You stop wasting time trying to shape what won't change, and you start shaping your own life with precision, focus, and purpose. So here's the invitation. The next time you're tempted to correct someone, pause, breathe. Ask, does this lead to growth or just more resistance? If it's the latter, release it. Let it go. Not everything needs to be said. Not every truth needs to be pushed, and not every argument needs to be won. Because peace isn't found in convincing others. It's found in being grounded enough not to need to. 8. Silence is your best shield. In a world that glorifies reaction, speaking up is often seen as strength. Responding quickly, defending yourself instantly, proving your point loudly, these are celebrated. But there's another kind of strength, quieter and more powerful. It's the kind that doesn't argue, doesn't rush to correct, doesn't get pulled into battles of ego. It's the kind of strength found in silence. Silence is misunderstood. Many people think it means surrender, weakness, or avoidance. But the Stoics knew better. To them, silence wasn't absence, it was presence. A conscious choice to protect energy, to preserve clarity, and to keep the self from being contaminated by noise. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Sometimes the most powerful reaction is none at all. Think about it. When someone insults you, what do they really want? Your attention, your energy, your reaction. And when you give it, they win, not because they were right, but because they pulled you out of yourself. They made you descend into their chaos. But when you remain silent, genuinely silent, not passive-aggressively quiet, you deny them what they crave most: control over your mind. Silence is a boundary. It says, I'm not engaging in this because I value my peace more than proving anything to you. It doesn't mean you're avoiding truth. It means you're protecting your soul from unnecessary friction. And more often than not, silence says more than words ever could. It says you're not easily shaken, that you know your worth, that your peace is not up for debate. Let's be clear, silence doesn't mean bottling things up. It means knowing when expression is valuable and when it's just noise. It's the difference between speaking from wisdom and reacting from woundedness. It's the ability to sit in discomfort without rushing to fix or explain, and that takes maturity, that takes mastery. Imagine being in a conversation where someone is clearly trying to provoke you. They raise their voice. They distort your words. They twist your intentions. The old you might have fought back, explained, defended, maybe even raised your own voice. But the grounded you, the stoic version of you, you pause, you breathe, you look them in the eyes and say nothing, not to punish, but to preserve, to keep your mind from being dragged into their drama, to protect the stillness you've worked so hard to build. And yes, some people will interpret your silence as weakness. Let them. They'll say you're cold, uncaring, detached. Let them. That's their projection, not your truth. Because what they call cold, the wise call wisdom. What they call indifference, the wise call discernment. And what they call silence, the wise recognize as power. The truth is, every unnecessary argument you avoid, every insult you don't respond to, every temptation to defend your ego that you resist, that's a win. Not a win over them, but a win over yourself. A win over the part of you that used to react, to explain, to overextend. That part is fading. In its place, there's stillness, presence, power. So practice this in your next conflict. Don't rush to speak. Don't be the first to defend. Let your silence do the talking. Let it hold the space. Let it speak your self-control, because when you master the art of not reacting, you begin to see the world differently. You begin to notice how much energy is wasted on words that don't need to be said, and you realize that sometimes the greatest response is none at all, not out of fear, but out of freedom. 9. Keep your emotional thermostat internal. Imagine walking into a room where everyone is tense. Voices are sharp, shoulders are tight, and emotions are running high. Within minutes, without even realizing it, you feel your own chest tighten, your breath shortens, you adopt the room's mood like it's your own. That's what happens when your emotional thermostat is set externally, when your inner state depends on the temperature of the world around you. But Stoicism teaches us to reverse that, to stop letting the weather outside dictate the climate within, to become the kind of person who stays warm in a cold room, calm in a storm, centered in chaos. When you outsource your emotional state to others, you lose control of your own life. If someone's anger makes you angry, you've given them power. If someone's fear infects you with anxiety, you've given them access. If someone's negativity drains you, you've opened your door without checking who's knocking. And the worst part? You probably don't even notice it happening because emotional contagion is subtle. It creeps in through body language, tone of voice, facial expressions. It enters not through arguments, but through resonance. But once you see it, you can stop it. You can reclaim your settings. The Stoics believed that virtue was internal, that your peace, like your character, must be chosen, not borrowed. You don't catch calm from the world. You cultivate it. You build it through awareness, discipline, and conscious choice. That means when someone yells, you don't match their volume. You lower yours. When someone is panicking, you don't spiral with them. You become the anchor. You say to yourself, this is their storm, not mine. I do not enter unless I choose to. Because what good is peace if it disappears every time the room gets loud? Think of your emotional state like a home thermostat. If it's set to 72 degrees and someone walks in blasting cold air, the system doesn't panic, it compensates. It warms the room. It maintains the baseline. That's how you must be with your mind. Other people will bring chaos, stress, urgency, but you don't need to adjust to match them. You adjust to stay aligned with yourself. You regulate instead of reacting. You protect your baseline, not out of stubbornness, but out of self-respect. Let's be clear, this doesn't mean being numb. It means being steady. It doesn't mean avoiding people. It means not letting their emotions dictate yours. You can still empathize without absorbing. You can still support without becoming overwhelmed. You can still care deeply without carrying burdens that aren't yours. The real challenge is catching yourself in the moment. When someone pushes your buttons, ask, is this my feeling or is it theirs? When the room gets tense, ask, do I need to tense up or can I stay relaxed? When negativity starts to rise, ask, do I want to match this frequency or lower mine and shift the tone? These aren't small questions, they're power moves. They're the tools that help you live on your terms, not on emotional autopilot. And sometimes the people around you won't understand. They'll say, why aren't you more upset? Or don't you care? And the answer is, of course you care. You just don't need to collapse to prove it. You've learned that emotional maturity isn't about reacting. It's about responding, not from pressure, but from presence. So the next time you feel your inner climate changing because of someone else's weather, pause, breathe, reset your thermostat. Remind yourself, I decide how I feel. I decide how I show up. I am not a mirror. I am a center. Because that's what the Stoic life is. Not detachment from the world, but sovereignty within it. Not apathy, but stability, and not control over others, but control over yourself. 10. Create sacred routines that refill you. You can't protect energy that you don't replenish. That's the quiet truth most people miss. They set boundaries, they limit toxic people, they say no more often, but they forget the other half of the equation, restoration. Because no matter how careful you are with your energy, life will still drain you. Daily responsibilities, emotional triggers, background stress. It all takes something from you, and if you don't have practices in place to put energy back, you're not protecting your peace. You're slowly running on fumes. The Stoics weren't just warriors of thought. They were craftsmen of routine. They understood that greatness isn't built in chaos, but in quiet repetition. Marcus Aurelius wrote every morning, not because he had time, but because he needed alignment. Seneca scheduled solitude, not because he disliked people, but because he valued inner clarity more than social obligation. These weren't luxury practices. They were survival tools, rituals that acted like armor. So, what do sacred routines look like today? They don't have to be elaborate. They don't require incense or mountaintop retreats. They just need to be yours. Maybe it's waking up before the world and sitting in stillness for 10 minutes. Maybe it's walking outside with no phone and just breathing, reconnecting with the physical world. Maybe it's journaling, just a few honest lines to clear the mental fog. Maybe it's drinking your coffee in silence, no headlines, no scrolling, just presence. These are not indulgences, they are anchors. The point is not what you do, but that you do it with intention. That you create spaces in your day that are not dictated by noise, demands, or performance. Spaces that exist not to serve others, but to nourish you. Because if your day begins in chaos, your mind will follow. If your moments are filled with distraction, your thoughts will be scattered. But when you begin and end your day with ritual, you build emotional muscle. You reclaim control. Most people only notice their routines when they're gone. When burnout hits. When resentment builds. When the mind becomes so loud it's hard to think. But you don't have to wait for depletion. You can build replenishment into your life now. You can decide proactively that your energy deserves protection, not just from people, but from pace, from endless doing, from being always on. It's especially important when you're around others constantly, family, coworkers, friends. Even good relationships can drain if you're always available. Your rituals become a quiet way of saying, I'm not just here for others, I am here for myself too. That's not selfish, that's wise, because you can't pour from an empty cup, and you can't protect peace if you never stop to restore it. So here's a reflection. When do you feel most centered, most alive, most grounded? Whatever the answer is, that's your ritual. Guard it, schedule it, build your day around it, not the other way around. Because the more you treat your routines as sacred, the less vulnerable you become to emotional chaos. The stronger your habits, the quieter your mind, the more rooted your day, the less shaken your spirit. Your energy is not just something to defend, it's something to rebuild, and every small act of intentional rest, reflection, or stillness is not wasted time. It's spiritual maintenance. It's how you stay sharp, stay kind, stay unshakable. So build your rituals, return to them often, and remember, peace isn't something you stumble into. It's something you prepare for daily. 11. Walk away when peace becomes impossible. There comes a moment, quiet and sobering, when you realize that no matter how much you try, no matter how kind your tone, how patient your effort, or how many boundaries you've set, peace in a certain relationship, environment, or situation is simply not possible. Not because you failed, not because you didn't try hard enough, but because peace requires mutual respect, and that's not something you can create alone. And in that moment, walking away becomes more than an option. It becomes a necessity. The hardest walk is often the one that leads you back to yourself. The one where you decide not out of resentment, but out of clarity that staying would cost you too much, that enduring any longer would mean betraying your values, your needs, your sanity. It's not an act of rage. It's not revenge. It's alignment. It's saying, this is no longer where I grow. This is where I shrink, and I won't shrink for anyone. The Stoics understood that there is a time to endure and a time to exit. They didn't preach passive suffering. They taught discernment. Seneca once wrote, "A wise man is content with himself, but not so much that he's willing to live among the wicked." He meant that self-respect includes choosing your environment, that your virtue isn't measured by how much you tolerate, but by how wisely you choose what to tolerate. Sometimes we hold on because we've invested time. Other times because we fear starting over. But more often than not, we stay because we feel guilty for leaving, as if walking away is abandonment, as if self-preservation is selfish. But here's the truth. Peace is not something you earn through suffering, and it's not noble to remain where you're being slowly diminished. You are not meant to endure disrespect just to prove you're loyal. You're not meant to stay in someone else's storm just to show you care. The most powerful form of love is the kind that includes yourself. Walking away isn't giving up. It's giving yourself permission to grow elsewhere. It's recognizing that not every story needs closure, not every conflict needs resolution, and not every person is meant to walk the entire path with you. Some relationships are chapters, some jobs are bridges, some environments are teachers, but not everything is meant to be permanent. And when peace becomes impossible, leaving is not failure. It's wisdom. You don't need to make a scene. You don't need to explain yourself 10 times. The exit can be silent, simple, and firm. A decision made once and honored daily. Because the act of walking away is not about distance. It's about direction. It's not about who you're leaving behind. It's about who you're walking toward. A version of you that's free, unburdened, untangled from cycles that drain you. Someone who wakes up in a space of quiet, not constant tension. And yes, the path after you walk away can be lonely. There may be doubt, regret, even grief. But over time, something else appears. Clarity, relief, a deeper strength you didn't know you had. You'll look back and realize leaving wasn't the end. It was the beginning of your return. The moment you stopped asking for peace from places incapable of giving it and started creating it on your own terms. So if you find yourself in a situation where your peace has become a battlefield, where your presence feels like a compromise, where your soul whispers, "This is not it," listen. Don't wait for permission. Don't wait for it to get worse. The longer you stay, the more of yourself you'll lose, and your peace is not worth sacrificing for proximity. Because in the end, protecting your energy isn't about pushing people away. It's about bringing yourself back fully, fiercely, quietly, with grace. Here's what you learn when you finally decide to protect your energy. Not everyone is meant to walk with you. Not every conflict deserves your attention, and not every emotion that enters your space belongs to you. Peace is not a passive reward handed out at the end of suffering. It's something you build moment by moment, decision by decision, through silence, through boundaries, through the courage to say no without guilt and walk away without drama. The Stoics didn't preach perfection. They practiced presence. They didn't aim to be untouched by life, but unmoved by what didn't matter. And in a world where noise is constant and emotions are contagious, they remind us, your power lies in what you choose not to absorb. The anger you don't reflect, the invitation to chaos you decline, the opinions you don't chase, the battles you let pass by untouched. That is strength. Not loud, not visible, but rooted, unshakable, quietly radiant. So ask yourself as this episode ends, what am I still giving energy to that no longer deserves it? Who am I still trying to fix, impress, explain myself to at the cost of my peace? And most importantly, what would my life feel like if I truly treated my energy as sacred? You already know the answers. The real work is choosing them, not once, but daily. Not when it's easy, but especially when it's not. That's where discipline becomes liberation. That's where your quiet, untouchable power begins. If this episode helped you reconnect with that power, share it with someone who needs the same reminder. Subscribe for more reflections like this, and let's keep building lives rooted in clarity, not chaos. Until next time, protect your peace fiercely, quietly, unapologetically.